Welcome back to the Redraft Show, Waivers Edition. We gotta work on that title for some reason. But today we're here to get into what's going on as far as the waiver wire goes. Basically, these are end of bench stashes for week one. These are guys that I want on the end of my bench so that if they pop off in week one, you basically beat the waiver wire. And these guys are already on your bench as either trade bait or valuable pieces, because we all know somebody's going to get injured. It's going to be unfortunate. But without further ado, let's get into it. At quarterback, you've got Trevor Lawrence, currently 46% rostered on Sleeper. Now, he gets the Carolina Panthers, who by all metrics were one of the worst defenses in NFL history. Ejiro Evero, the defensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers, a cupboard was completely bare. They did have J.C. Horn. They do have Derek Brown returning from injury, but this, they haven't added enough pieces for me to feel they did. I mean, they drafted well. They drafted a couple edge rushers. We'll see between Nick Scorton and what's his name? What's the kid's name? Prince Unmanliellen. Shout out to Google for allowing me to be able to pull that one off. I practiced that one a couple times. But anywho, so Trevor Lawrence currently on waivers, gets a great matchup in week one with Brian Thomas. And if what Travis Hunter is what he potentially could be and is going to play a lion's share of the snaps on offense, Trevor Lawrence almost feels too big to fail. He's got Britton Strange. He's got Travis Etienne. He's got Bajal Tootin, the home run hitter. He's got Tank Bigsby, you pick your poison there. One of those guys is going to be way better for fantasy than we're giving it credit for. And, I'm not going to call the shot there just because there's too much going on. Obviously, by ADP, you would go Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and then, you've got you could take a late round flyer on Bajal Tootin, but that's a different story for a different day. Pick your poison there. I'm going elsewhere as far as that goes. We'll stay in the division as we move to the running back position, and we're going to talk about Damien Pierce. So Damien Pierce has been basically left for dead since the out of nowhere rookie year on one of the worst offenses in football. He comes out, his rookie year, they're more of a power counter gap scheme, lots of pulls, lots of pulling linemen, lots of counter motions, lots of downhill, just straight downhill, picking your gap and getting downhill. And so he thrived in that. And then the last 2 years of Bobby Slowick, 2023 and 2024, he's been absolutely awful. 2024, he was not absolutely awful. He averaged 7 yards per carry and had a 92-yard touchdown run and several other 6 runs of over 15 yards, 10 plus yards on 40 carries. So 7 yards a carry, the 92-yard touchdown. We may have written his obituary. He's only 16% rostered. So let's go just stash Damien Pierce on the end of your bench just to make sure that we're not missing something egregious here. Nick Chubb, we think should get the ball first, but at worst, it's probably going to be a rotation, and you could have a back in the Texans offense. It's been fairly valuable over the last couple of years. Joe Mixon in 2024 was the RB1 in points per game from weeks 1 to 11. So you give yourself an opportunity to at least have a share in that backfield and see how it shakes out. And then again, he's only 16% rostered. So you can get him. Not many people are thinking about him. You can flip him, or you can toss him back onto the waiver wire and let him be somebody else's problem. But that brings me to my next point. Another really not great situation as far as the outlook for the running back room. Now, we did get the major Quinshon Judkins news that Quinshon Judkins could join the team as early as this weekend. And that does change the math a little bit. But even still, he's got to get up to speed. We don't know what kind of ramp up he will have as a player that hasn't been on the field for any of training camp, none of the preseason games. He's just expected to join a team. He's currently not under contract. So we're going to take advantage of that. And the way that we're going to do that is by picking up Jerome Ford. Now, Jerome Ford is over 50% rostered. So I typically try to stay under 50%, but 52% rostered is Jerome Ford. You can grab him in the last round of your drafts. If you're one of those sickos that's drafting the night before the game, I much respect to you, but You can go get him in the last round of your drafts. I mean, he's probably a 16th round pick. If your drafts go that far, if not, then you should be able to pick him up off of waivers right now. And I suggest you do that. And then moving on to the wide receiver position, we'll stay in Cleveland. I know, really gross, but there's a guy who was the wide receiver 1 overall from week 7 to 9 before suffering a concussion. And Jerry Jeudy Judying, Judge Judy was adjudicating. Oh man, I don't know. What are we doing here? Anyway, Cedrick Tillman is one of those guys that is absolutely underlooked and undervalued. So people will say that he's not good because he couldn't get on the field because Amari Cooper was playing the X role, but he got on the field and he was a wide receiver 1. I don't care that your championship didn't happen in week 10. It doesn't matter. This is a guy who was elite when he got a full snap share. And now with Joe Flacco, a full grown adult, we're the same age. Actually, I think I'm a couple weeks older than Joe Flacco. And he's playing, I'm doing this and he's playing American tackle football. And he's going to be throwing passes to a guy like Cedrick Tillman. Cedrick Tillman's only 32% rostered on Sleeper currently. So that's a guy that you could throw on the end of your bench. Let's just see what the target share shakes out to be. It's pretty clearly going to be between him and Njoku and Jerry Jeudy to divide that pie up. And Joe Flacco, as the seasoned old veteran, will be dicing them up and slicing them up. And he actually could be a streamer because they do play the Bengals in week 1, and that has a chance to be sneaky entertaining. I don't want to call it good because you never want to call the Cleveland Browns, never want to call them good. So apologies to anybody from Cleveland. Hey, Zach, Scratch, we're even now. I'll just say that. So at any rate, we're moving on. We're staying in the AFC North, and we're moving on to Rashod Bateman of the Baltimore Ravens, currently under 50% roster. The number exactly escapes me, but Rashod Bateman, career high 9 touchdowns, only 72 targets. This was the first season since his, parts of his rookie year where he got to play a full season. He got the bag in the offseason. He's a part of their plans. And I don't think that is going to change. So he did get quite a bit of run as, just a red zone option, but he wins deep down the field and he does have the ability to yak it up after the catch. So we've got a 6'3" guy with an immense catch radius and wheels after the catch. And he's just kind of coming into his own. So I would take the chance that this Baltimore and Buffalo week 1 game has a chance to be somewhat of a shootout. And I would want a piece of that if my wide receiver room was a little bit iffy, if I was rostering a guy like Rashee Rice, if I wasn't able to get Hollywood Brown to offset that Rashee Rice. You can look right here to Cedrick Tillman and we'd be in good shape. Last but not least, we're moving on to a guy that I did bring up previously, Hollywood Brown. Hollywood Brown, currently only 30% rostered on Sleeper. And so Jalen Royals might not play. Xavier Worthy, we know what that is. Travis Kelce, we know what that is. But we have Hollywood Brown here, who is a key piece of this Kansas City Chiefs offense, no matter how you slice it. The target pie can be consolidated, and Hollywood Brown could still make your week on one play. So them taking on the Los Angeles Chargers on Friday, after kickoff of the NFL season, they're taking on the Chargers in Brazil. That turf is going to be absolutely dog water, just like it was last year. And that allows a fast guy like Hollywood Brown or Xavier Worthy to make your week in one play. So with that being the case, you want to have a piece of somebody who's insanely fast and can make your week on one play. I don't really understand why you wouldn't want to give that a go. So that being said, we're going to move on to some guys that I would drop. And the first quarterback I would drop is, if you're rostering Daniel Jones, I just told you to roster Joe Flacco and Trevor Lawrence. So let's get that fixed. I mean, Daniel Jones could offer sneaky rushing upside, and then you can pick him up if he looks decent in week 1 against the Dolphins. But honestly, we don't know. But I would much rather roster Joe Flacco or Mr. Trevor Lawrence, who I mentioned earlier, at least 2 rushing touchdowns in every season of his career. So Then we move on to the running back position. Another guy that I feel like doesn't really need to be on your roster. He's a roster clogger with no real role or upside to offer to your team in the year of our Lord 2025. And that is Kareem Hunt. Now, he did play part-time kicker at some point, and now, he's back to being a full-time running back. And with that, he is no longer going to be of service for us in 2025. He doesn't really have juice. He wasn't really elusive. He was the best option they had with Isaiah Pacheco hobbling through the season and trying to give them some sort of presence on the ground. It just didn't work, though. And now he's 31% rostered. He should be 0% rostered. Let's move on to the next guy, Jalen Wright, another guy who we all had the hopium for. We were extremely excited for a guy who's 6 foot, 210, runs a 4.3, but he just can't put it together in terms of like seeing where holes are as an NFL running back and then getting to and through them, despite the crazy 4.3 speed that he has. So much rather roster the 2023 Doak Walker Award winner in Ollie Gordon, the rookie out of Oklahoma State. He's a guy that you need to be targeting. His up over 50% roster now. But if you're one of the sickos doing a draft on Wednesday before the draft starts or hours before the draft on Thursday, that's a guy to target in your late rounds. Ollie Gordon, 13th round pick in our ADP. That's free game. You're welcome. Then we move on. Last but not least, there's a couple guys at the wide receiver position that I want you to get up off your rosters. Josh Palmer, listen, there's too much skill set overlap between you and Elijah Moore. Everybody's doing a Spider-Man meme. Khalil Shakir is, just standing on a table, handless clapping or whatever he's doing, but he's the guy in the room. And then you have Keon Coleman, who I would take a shot on. But everybody else, we're just going to leave you, and you'll have to prove us wrong. Josh Palmer fits that description. So he's 31% rostered. Not 31%. He might be more rostered than that. I would have to go back and check, but that's a guy that I would drop for the guys that I told you that I would pick up. Hollywood Brown, the Cedrick Tillmans, the Rashod Batemans of the world. I would drop him. Let's just be honest. And then Pop Douglas, I think that can have that role has had some value traditionally, but with the pass catching options, with the fact that Hunter Henry displayed some chemistry with Drake May last year, I'd prefer to roster if I'm saving a roster spot. I would much rather have a Rashod Bateman, a Cedrick Tillman, even Adam Thielen. I would rather have all those guys on my bench as more of an upside play than what I think Pop Douglas is. And then I told you maybe you stashed Darren Waller if you were starting a guy like Dallas Goedert, but if you've got a guy like Dallas Goedert on your bench and you're holding on to Cade Otton, please, it's over. It's over. Okay. All right. It's just, I hate to be the one to tell you, but I'm telling you, it's over. Okay. So let's get that. Let's just be done with that. Okay. He has no place on a fantasy football roster in the year of our Lord 2025. Let's just get that out of the way. Okay. And then last but not least, if there's a million Dalton Schultz haters, I'm the biggest one. If there's two Dalton Schultz haters, I'm definitely the biggest one. If there's no Dalton Schultz haters left, I might have gone to the other side of the dirt. So he doesn't belong on your roster no matter what. Never Dalton Schultz, not even if there's a fire. And with that, we have given you your week 1 rundown of waivers. Beat your league mates to the waiver wire. I don't know where that was a lot of beat your. But this was fun. I'm looking forward to doing this. We'll be doing these every week. These should drop like Tuesday afternoon, so you can hit your commute home or whatever you're going to cut the grass or whatever you need to do. You can listen to my smooth, silky voice or watch my face. Please just listen. I don't even like looking at the camera and doing this, but we appreciate you tapping in, man. I'm looking forward to doing these on a weekly basis. So until next time, you know how we leave it. There's ball watchers and there's ball knowers. And ball knowers always beat their teammates, their league mates to the waiver wire. Until next time.